Clerk Maxwell, the man who changed everything. The Man Who Changed Everything is a biography that is fact. This is because it tells you about James Clerk Maxwell and his ventures on becoming one of the most profound scientists that the world has ever seen. This is due to his revolutionary experiments and research in electromagnetism, which led him to discover color photography, electromagnetic waves, and electromagnetic equations. Every single one of these discoveries we use in our everyday lives. Therefore, James Maxwell had a massive impact on the way we live our lives today. Some quotes that will live on forever to inspire people that are from James Clerk Maxwell are, "What's the goal with that?" This meaning that James would always try and find the goal of an invention, object, and idea. This led him to not just cover the base of the experiment, but to question the whole idea of the experiment itself, so that he could possibly find more information to lead to a new theory. Another quote is, "I never try to dissuade a man from trying an experiment. If he does not find what he wants, he might find something else." This meaning that he always pushed experiments, even if they seemed ridiculous. The reasoning to this is that it could lead to something new that you were never expecting. James Clerk Maxwell was born in Edinburgh, Scotland on June 13, 1831. He lived with his father and mother in a house with a lot of farmland and water. When James was young, his father moved them to Glenlair. It also had a lot of farmland and water so that James could continue to be a curious child. At Glenlair, his mother became very ill, and unfortunately she died. When it was time for Maxwell to go to school, there was an option for sending him to live with his aunt and attend a good school. But his father wanted to keep James close to him. Therefore, his father hired a 16-year-old tutor as a form of schooling for James. This led him to act out, which led his father to eventually send him away with his aunt to commence his learning at a real school with his cousins. At this school, James Clerk Maxwell began to excel and was sent to college at the age of 14. James Clerk Maxwell was very knowledgeable, and this can be credited to the education he received from the school he attended. Some examples of these schools are Edinburgh Academy, University of Edinburgh, which he attended between 1847 to 1850, University of Cambridge, 1815 to 1856, Maryshall College, 1856 to 1860, and lastly, King's College, 1860 to 1865. Some role models in James Clerk Maxwell's life are the people who pushed him to think about different ways he could perceive things to help him develop his research, or even the people who taught him about what it means to question everything. Some of these people who did this for him are James Forbes, professor of natural philosophy, who helped him to get into Edinburgh University because he saw the potential through him once he read James' first scientific paper, which he wrote at the age of 14. Sir William Hamilton, professor of logic and metaphysics, who was a professor at Edinburgh University, and he was a core inspiration for James because he taught James to always take the philosophical approach. Once Hamilton gave James an exercise on the properties of matter. James developed the quote, "Now the only thing which can be directly perceived by the sciences is force, which may be reduced by light, heat, electricity, sound, and all other things which can be perceived by the senses." James Maxwell had a ton of inventions, but some of the most recognizable inventions are color photography. He did this by putting 3 primary colored ribbons together on a board and projected them with light, and then he took a photograph. And this developed the first photo consisting of color for the first time ever. The 3 colors were the primary colors of light, which are green, blue, and red. James Maxwell also invented satellites. He did this by discovering that light waves were as fast as radioactive energy. This helped him to create equations to develop the relations between electricity, magnetism, and optics, which led him to invent a lot of other things such as it didn't lead him to invent these things, but it led to the mathematics and physics behind these things, like the microwave or the oven, or really just anything with electricity or radioactive waves. Electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is a magnetic fields that are the product of electric currents. Therefore, they give a force upon electrons. Maxwell's conclusion about electromagnetism is these particular waves travel as fast as the speed of light, concluding that electric waves are the same as light, but in a different form that gives energy to objects. This also develops the Maxwell equations, which George Vidal, Astronomer Royal, said, "It is one of the most remarkable applications of mathematics to physics that I've ever seen." The connection between light and electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is one of the most recognizable things that James Clerk studied and researched. This is because he changed the way we perceived electricity and light. Instead of them being two separate things, Maxwell figured out that electricity waves were as fast as the speed of light, although he questioned himself. Nothing is as fast as the speed of light. This is where he discovered that light and electricity waves must be the same thing, but represented in a different way. This is where he created the light spectrum, which we still use today. So the death of James Clerk Maxwell. He died November 5th, 1879, at a young age of 48 in Cambridge, was where he was buried, in Parton Church, the Church of Scotland, right next to his wife. This is 7 miles away from his home at Glenlair. And that is James Clerk Maxwell, the man who changed everything.